Europe is a small continent. It spans an area of about 3.9 million square miles, just slightly larger than Australia, which is the smallest continent. Depending on how you count, Europe is home to as few as 45 and as many as 57 countries. This isn't a huge difference compared to Asia, which is 4.5 times larger than Europe. Here, you can find the world's smallest countries, like Vatican City, with a population of just 1,000, and Monaco, which doesn't even reach 40,000 residents. Ever wonder why Europe has so many countries? Truth be told, Europe has never been entirely unified. Even the vast Roman Empire never controlled more than half of present-day Europe. Ambitious leaders have always tried to unify Europe after Rome's fall. There was Charlemagne of the 8th century Frankish kingdom, Napoleon in the 19th century, and Hitler in the 20th century. But every attempt has failed. Instead of unifying, Europe fragmented further each time these leaders' reigns ended. Historically, Europe has always been more prone to division than unification. There are many reasons for this, but the primary one is geopolitics. Put simply, the geography of Europe lends itself to the creation and defense of nations. For compelling explanations on this topic, you might look to Jared Diamond, author of Guns, Germs, and Steel, and Paul Kennedy, who wrote The Rise and Fall of the Great Powers. Diamond points out Europe's coastlines, rivers, and mountain ranges. A look at a map shows just how jagged and intricate Europe's coastlines are. Compare this with China, a country of a similar size, and the difference is stark. China's coast is much smoother. Europe, on the other hand, is filled with bays that cut deep into the land and massive peninsulas that jut out into the sea. What's a peninsula? It's a piece of land surrounded by water on three sides, almost like an island. They are naturally easy to defend. To attack such a place, you'd need both an army and a navy. Most peninsulas also come with good harbors, which means they're great for trade and maritime transportation. Geographically, they're perfect spots for nations to thrive. So in Europe, we have countries like Spain on the Iberian Peninsula, Italy on the Italian Peninsula, and Greece, Albania, and Bulgaria on the Balkan Peninsula. Ukraine is on the Crimean Peninsula. To the north, France has the Brittany Peninsula. Denmark is on the Jutland Peninsula. And Norway, Sweden, and Finland have been settled on the Scandinavian Peninsula for a very long time. Looking again toward China, we see the Korean Peninsula to the north and the Indochina Peninsula to the south. The geographic advantage of peninsulas likely played a role in countries like Vietnam, Cambodia, and Thailand maintaining their independence from China. Europe also has two sizable islands isolated by the English Channel, the UK and Ireland. These islands are even more advantageous for forming and protecting countries than peninsulas. This is quite different from China, which only has Taiwan as a significant island off its coast. But Taiwan is a relatively small island, not even half the size of Ireland. If there had been an island as big as the UK in front of China, it might have become an independent country quite early on. The peninsulas and bays might have divided Europe's coastlines, but the vast mountain ranges are what segmented the interior. At first glance, Europe might seem full of plains, but it's the mountain ranges that have often separated the major nations. The Pyrenees divide Spain and France. The Alps set the boundary between France, Germany, and Italy, and the Carpathians have carved out numerous countries on the Balkan Peninsula. Additionally, the Ural and Caucasus Mountains play a crucial role geographically as they separate Asia and Europe. These mountain ranges not only made it challenging for external powers to invade Europe, but also posed obstacles for creating and sustaining a pan-European empire. But peninsulas and mountains alone aren't enough for countries to thrive. They need rivers for sustenance. Europe's rivers have a unique geographical pattern. Unlike major rivers such as the Yellow River, Nile, Ganges, or Tigris-Euphrates, which can sustain entire civilizations, Europe has numerous medium-sized rivers, and they don't just flow east-west, they span every direction. So, rivers like the Loire, Rhine, Elbe, Danube, and Volga can each support several countries along their banks. Paul Kennedy once remarked about Europe's geography, "There was neither a vast plain that a horse-riding empire could quickly dominate, nor vast and fertile river valleys to sustain large populations." In other words, if Europe had rivers like the Yellow River or the Nile, the power dynamics could have shifted towards the dominating forces, potentially resulting in vast empires. But that wasn't the case. Thanks to the natural defense lines of coasts and mountains, it became challenging for larger powers to conquer smaller ones. As a result, Europe became a continent of diverse ethnicities, cultures, and languages, such as Germanic, Latin, and Slavic. This complexity made it tough for Europe to form large unified states for a long time. Even if a large country was established, it often broke apart due to the pushback from local lords and nobles. After the fall of Rome, and during the Middle Ages, feudalism took root in Europe. Considering Europe's long history of isolated powers bolstered by seas, mountains, and rivers, feudalism seems like a fitting system. Even with the Holy Roman Empire, the emperor never had the vast authority like Chinese emperors. To form a large country, you'd need a centralized structure, with the emperor at its peak. But the Holy Roman Emperor was, at best, just a representative of the nobility. Religion played a significant role in shaping Europe's history after the Middle Ages, resulting in the continent being divided into many countries of varying sizes. At times, the Pope wielded more power than the Holy Roman Emperor. Local bishops had significant authority, with many religious figures possessing vast lands and castles. These individuals, who held as much political power as the regional lords, weren't keen on the emergence of empires. Christianity greatly influenced the formation of nation-states in Europe. After the Protestant Reformation, which began with Martin Luther in 1517, the old and new branches of the Church continually clashed until the culmination in the 30 Years' War. This was one of the deadliest religious wars in human history, and was essentially the first international conflict in which nearly every European nation participated. This brutal war, which spanned 30 years without a break, finally ended in 1648 with the Treaty of Westphalia. This treaty granted each European nation religious freedom. More importantly, it paved the way for European countries, which were previously under the religious umbrella of the Holy Roman Empire, to embrace the concept of a nation-state based on territory. This shift led to many countries gaining independence all at once. While Europe further divided during the World Wars, the foundation of today's Europe is rooted in the Treaty of Westphalia. Now let's briefly touch on China, which centralized power much earlier than Europe. Geographically, China is like a fortress. The Himalayas and deserts to the west, dense forests to the south, and the ocean to the east act as natural barriers against invaders. The northern plains were a concern, but the construction of the Great Wall addressed this. China lacks significant islands and has a simple coastline. There aren't major mountain ranges that would divide the country either. Controlling the major rivers, the Yangtze and Yellow River, provided a distinct advantage in governing the land. The dominant Han language and ethnicity facilitated cultural integration. These conditions allowed China to form a unified government much more easily than Europe. However, it's challenging to determine whether fragmentation or unification has yielded better results. While China has had a long history of unity, it was once the underdog of East Asia. In modern times, after facing humiliations from Europe and Japan, it has risen as a superpower. Europe, which is often fragmented, saw its powerful nations once dominate the world. Yet, Europe seems to be faltering now. Europe still holds on to an unfulfilled dream, not of territorial, but economic integration, primarily through the European Union. Some even see the EU as the successor to the Holy Roman Empire. However, with events like Brexit, Europe's dream faces challenges. Europe's long history of divisions seems interconnected with the ongoing challenges of the EU.